Another hot topic in Washington is the soon departure of the man who made history as the very first African-American Attorney General. Eric Holder's name of possible replacements are being floated as the politics of the confirmation process begins. Although he became an icon among liberals, he was a divisive figure among conservatives, and critical assessments of Holder's tenure began almost immediately after news broke of his resignation. U.S. President Barack Obama explained Holder's departure.
And over the summer, he came to me and he said he thought 6 years was a pretty good run. With his typical dedication, Eric has agreed to stay on as Attorney General until I nominate a successor, and that successor is confirmed by the Senate, which means he'll have a chance to add to a proud career of public service, one that began nearly 40 years ago as a young prosecutor in the department that he now runs.
Eric Holder was one of the earliest members of the president's cabinet and the nation's first African-American Attorney General. He made this comment about his resignation.
I come to this moment with very mixed emotions. Proud of what the men and women of the Department of Justice have accomplished over the last 6 years, and at the same time, very sad that I will not be a formal part of the great things that this department and this President will accomplish over the next 2. I want to thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity that you gave me to serve and for giving me the greatest honor of my professional life.
Many of Holder's Republican critics are now launching fresh attacks at him, and they are positioning themselves to battle the president if they object to his nominee to replace Holder. Benjamin Goad is a staff writer for The Hill, and he joins us from Washington, D.C. to talk about what Eric Holder's departure means on Capitol Hill. Hey, Benjamin, it's good to see you. I think, first of all, I want to start here. Do you have any insight into why Eric Holder is stepping down? I know it's not a surprise inside the Beltway, and why now?
Absolutely. Well, he has been rumored to be mulling an exit from the position for many years. As you mentioned, he was one of the longest standing of the president's lieutenants from the original team of rivals that President Obama assembled upon his entrance to the White House. So it had been rumored that he was mulling a departure prior to the Ferguson shooting, after which his office was thrust back into the limelight and he was prevailed upon to stay, and now he's saying it's just time to leave. He's had several conversations with the president, including an hour-long affair on Labor Day weekend, and apparently that's when the two came to an agreement.
Seems to be now part of the big discussion will be how quickly the president will identify a nominee for the position, which will require Senate confirmation, and that has all kinds of political ramifications coming up into this midterm election cycle. Who are the names that are bubbling to the top right now?
Well, there are several, and interestingly, some of them have already sort of started to distance themselves from the equation. We saw Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick this week say he was not interested in the job. Also, Amy Klobuchar, a senator from Minnesota, has said that. Kamala Harris, an attorney general in California. So rising stars saying that they are not interested at this time in the position. So there are other names swirling about the Washington rumor mill. There is Tony West, who was the #3 man at the agency before he stepped down recently. Former Department of Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano's name has been in the mix, and also Solicitor General Donald Verrilli is reportedly on the short list, if there is such a thing this early in the hunt.
Yeah, well, presumably, since this is not a surprise, somebody, I would imagine, has been talking about this. The next thing that's being talked about is how quickly this process will go. There is a conventional wisdom that perhaps the White House should put forth a nominee as soon as possible to try to get that nominee before this now Democrat-run Senate, before a new Senate is in place at the beginning of the year after the elections, just in case the Democrats lose the majority there. Is the president well served to try to rush this process?
Well, I think so. If he wants his pick of a Holder's successor, I think he has to move quickly. Republicans have signaled that they are going to be willing to try to block any controversial nominee, and they will have the power to do that if they gain control of the Senate in November. So I think the president, it would behoove him to move quickly on this and potentially use a lame duck session following the election to try to push through a nominee. But that's a very short time frame for a process that generally takes months.
Let's talk about some of the key activities of the Department of Justice that have been happening under the leadership of Eric Holder and what their future might be when the new AG is put into place. Of course, many of these were subjects of a lot of criticism from Republicans. That is, of course, investigating the Michael Brown Jr. shooting in Ferguson, Missouri. Of course, the Department of Justice was criticized for monitoring the cell phone conversations of journalists, has upheld the president's assertion that he's well within his executive authority to proceed with the airstrikes against ISIS without the approval of Congress. How many of these ongoing actions and investigations are in jeopardy when a new AG comes in?
Well, I think there are some people on Capitol Hill that say some of the top priorities of Eric Holder are going to be in jeopardy because they may not be top priorities of his successor. And you mentioned the Ferguson investigation. That's obviously something that the Attorney General has become personally involved in. He traveled to Ferguson after the Brown shooting and has launched multiple investigations, both of the Ferguson police officer involved and the department. And so there are questions about what will become of those investigations once Holder steps down. Also sort of his broader civil rights push. I think that the Attorney General would say that's a big part of his legacy, where he's been aggressively pushing for things like access to voting. And so that is something that it remains to be seen whether his replacement will have the same devotion.
Indeed. We'll have to stop right there for now. Benjamin Goad, thank you so much, Ben. Have a great weekend.
You bet.
And you're watching Arise America.